named Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton as the pioneers of the women's suffrage movement at the end of the 19th century. However, one of their most important collaborators during the time has been repeatedly written out of history for her progressive ideals. Matilda Joslyn Gage was a key component in women earning the right to vote and one of the first voices to advocate for other oppressed groups in the United States. Today we'll commemorate this woman for her tremendous bravery in a time where she could have been, and was, arrested for speaking out. First, she was radical. Matilda Joslyn Gage was a suffragist that worked alongside the well-known Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton, yet she is often written out of history for being too radical for the time. Gage wanted all women to have the right to vote, including women of color, which created dissonance between Gage and Anthony's ideals. In 1890, Gage dissolved her union with Anthony due to Anthony's conservative approach of allowing states to make laws regarding suffrage, not the federal government. This was also in line with enforcing segregation and Jim Crow laws, which Gage did not support, and she went on to create her own union that defied these laws. She also became the founder of the National Women's Suffrage Association in 1875, and she developed the New York chapter of this association later on, where she held the position of president for 9 years. In 1850, Gage began to harbor multiple freedom takers, which is a term that we use to describe former slaves, despite the newly passed fugitive slave law. After a month of this law in effect, she petitioned the fine and 6-month prison term that came along with harboring each former slave in her home. In the 1870s, she wrote a series of articles about the mistreatment of Native Americans by the U.S. government. She acted on her work by interacting with the indigenous groups in the area, specifically the Wolf Clan of the Mohawk Nation. Secondly, she was intelligent. Before her time in activism, she wrote poetry and blog-like entries about her travels. In 1870, she researched and published an article titled Women as Inventor, where she credited the invention of the cotton gin to a woman named Catherine Littlefield Greene. Today, we can attribute the term the Matilda effect to when a woman is denied her scientific achievements. She also wrote and published several works including The History of Women's Suffrage alongside Anthony and Stanton, as well as the National Citizen and Ballot Box, which became the official newspaper of the National Women's Suffrage Association. She also wrote a critique on the Civil War and the hypocrisy of the Statue of Liberty being a woman, while not a single woman in the land had liberty. In 1893, she also published Women, Church, and State, which criticized the role of religion in the federal government and its justification for the oppression of women. In conclusion, MJG should be remembered for her contributions to the suffrage movement and honored with the inclusion of her history in standard school curriculum. Thank you.